So, if you were trying to join in to our other podcast, I sincerely apologize. We keep trying to use that system. Whenever we test it, it's fine, it works. We see the sound, we see the video, everything's working well. And then, as soon as we actually go live on Wednesdays, we just have been struggling with it, honestly. So I do sincerely apologize. So, welcome. My name is Kimberly, and I am a paralegal here at the Law Office of Olu Asekun. And obviously, I am not Dr. Asekun. He is unfortunately in court today. He was called into court, and uh, unfortunately, he was unable to be here. So you get me today. If you have been joining in with us, or if you're a client who has been to the office before, maybe you've seen me, or if you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, X, any of those, maybe you've seen my face before there. And if you don't follow us, go ahead and give us a follow. We really appreciate that. And then, as for this podcast, we do this every week. We do it every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that's 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's 6 p.m. in Nigeria right now. So, welcome. We have been doing this series called Coming to Live and Work in the United States. We decided to do this series because we get a lot of questions that are just how do I come to the U.S.? What do I do? What is my best option? What can I do to get work authorization? What can I do to gain permanent residence? How do I become a citizen? We get a lot of questions that are like that. So we decided to go ahead and do this series to kind of explain the whole process. I mean, we started the first week with how to obtain a visa, and then we talked about going through the border and the United States Customs and Border Protection and what to expect with that when you're coming in by either the land entry, or if you're flying in, what to expect. And then last week we did changing status. So that's when you're already in the United States. How do you go about changing your status from, say, a visitor to something else? So now this week we are doing employment based adjustment of status. So that is employment based green cards. So that is how you get some type of uh, ability to get a green card through an employer. Um, it's sorry. Are you sure we're live? Because it's not showing up on here.
It's showing up here.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Oh, okay.
Tell me to.
Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. I went to go and see if there were questions, and I it wasn't showing up. I'm so sorry. Okay, so as I was saying, employment based is a very good option if you are not doing anything through your family. So through a spouse, a parent, child. Employment based is when an employer or yourself, depending on the circumstance, petition for you to get a green card based on employment. So there are different categories when it comes to employment based. There's EB 1 through 5. So EB 1 is aliens of extraordinary ability. And then EB2, that's aliens of exceptional ability. So that's what people typically referred to as NIW. It's the National Interest Waiver is within that category. There is EB3, which is for skilled workers. There is EB4. Typically, that is for embassy workers who are trying to retire, or certain religious workers. And then EB5 is through investment. So any one of those categories, it's all employment based. Let's see. Sorry, I'm seeing. Oh, somebody said hi. Hello. Um, and welcome. So, if you have questions about any type of employment based green card, go ahead and send in your questions now. I will say there are some important things to keep in mind when you are trying to petition for an employment based green card. The first thing that is really important is that you have to make sure that you are in status the entire time that you are here in the United States. So let's say you came to the United States as a visitor and then you changed to F1 to a student status while you were in school. And then when you're in school, you finish and then you get, say, your OPT, which is the employment authorization after you have already finished with your school. So if for some reason you were to let that OPT lapse, say you uh, you just don't, well, you can't really renew it, but if you don't find another way to keep yourself in status in that time, then you will be out of status, and that means that you are not eligible for employment based green cards. So, if you don't find another way to keep yourself in status, if you don't go back to school, if you don't try and extend, a temporary visitor status, do something to keep yourself in status, you will not be able to get an employment based green card. So that's something that some people don't realize. They have been here for so many years and maybe they were working for the same employer or something where they were out of status, then they find an employer that's willing to petition for them. And unfortunately, if you're out of status, that's just not an option that's available to you. So it's always really important to make sure that you're in status. And depending on the administration, it's always important to keep yourself in status when possible because you never know what each administration will say. I bring this up just because there were so many issues before when President Trump was elected where people ended up in removal proceedings because they were out of status when that wasn't something that was typically done as much before, and we haven't been seeing it with this administration. So, just given that it's an election year, it's always good to keep that in mind. So, oh, I do see that some questions have been coming in. Oh, God bless you too. Hello. Okay, so a question that we received via text. I came to the US as a visitor. How do I know what my options are? So that's a very good question. And again, that's part of why we're doing this podcast. If you come in as a visitor, well, a good first step would be to visit with an experienced immigration attorney because while we are doing this, to give everyone information, if you want like real one on one information, of course, it's always best to speak with an immigration attorney. However, another way to know, what your options are, it's what are you good at? What's something that speaks to you as a reason that you want to stay here. So, do you want to go to school? Do you want to, find an employer that's willing to petition for you? Do you want to go ahead and start a business? Do you want to go ahead and invest and get your green card through an investment? Do you want to work with a church? Are you a minister that would like to come here to spread your message through a church here? There's all different options, and so it really depends on what speaks to you and what works best for you because it's a little difficult to know exactly what you're looking for if we don't know anything about you. So, also, I mean, information is out there. There is some misinformation, so that's why I said the first, good choice is to go to an experienced immigration attorney. However, if you look up like on the USCIS website and just kind of browse through there and see what's something that maybe speaks to you and then research it. I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to do and what your qualifications are. So, for example, there is the EB2 National Interest Waiver. Now, that is something where you don't need an employer to go ahead and petition for you, but you do need to meet all of the qualifications. So, those are important things to ask yourself when you're trying to decide what to do to stay here if you come in as a visitor and would like to eventually stay, live, and work here. So, okay, next question. I have a visiting visa. Can I come to the US and look for a job? Now, this is something that if you're here on a visiting visa and your intent when you come in through the border is to look for a job, that's not good. You can't do that. The reason that I say that is because what your intentions are when you're coming into the United States, that matters. Um, because you can even have a petition denied if they find out that when you came into the United States, that you came with the intent to stay here, to live and work when you were coming in as a visitor. Now, if you come in as a visitor and you meet somebody that, say, you hit it off with and, you end up getting married, or you meet somebody else and they're an employer and they want to hire you. These are different situations. Or say you come in for a graduation and you fall in love with a certain school and their program for what you're trying to do. That's very different. But if you come in with the intent of staying as an immigrant, then that's something that can actually get your petition denied. So you don't want to come in here with the intent to stay. And I mean, some of the ways that the CBP officers know this is, I mean, a lot of them, they can look through your phone and see, okay, who are you staying with? And then they can call that person, say, hey, how long is, Sally coming to stay with you? Oh, she's staying for a year, but she said that she's only here 2 weeks. I mean, things like that can raise a lot of red flags. So it's really good to be sure that you're not crossing that line. I mean, that you know, if you're coming here as a visitor, but you bring your entire wardrobe, everything that you own, that's going to be a red flag to the CBP officers. And you can see more about that in our previous episode, where we talk about crossing the border and customs and border protection. So if you want to go ahead and watch that episode, you can go back and watch that one as well. Um, okay. uh, let's see. The next question received over text. I have overstayed already. Can I look for an employer so I can be in status again? Well, if you've overstayed already, I mean, you can look for an employer, but you would have to go through what's called consular processing. And that's where you actually have to leave the country during that time. You can't just be out of status for X amount of time and then just decide, okay, I want to be in status again, and then get an employer to petition for you. You would need to go through consular processing. Now, sometimes there is a bit of a grace period. I don't like to say this because then people kind of hang on to that. So you can try, but most likely it would be denied, or you would be told to do consular processing, that you're not in status. You have to go through consular processing, which takes you back to the National Visa Center and the embassy, typically in the country where you're from, and that's how you would have to go about it. You most likely would not be able to stay here while waiting for that. You'd have to go back out. Okay. Question received over text. I am a nurse in my country. Can I get a job in the US as a nurse? Oh, yes. I mean, there are a lot of really good opportunities for nurses. Uh, I would say the first thing that I would do is get your degrees, get an evaluation done on your degrees and see if they're equivalent to being a nurse here as well. If it's an RN or LVN, see what the equivalency is just to be sure that you would be getting the job that you want. So if you want to be an RN, make sure that that's what your degree from back home is equivalent to here in the United States. And then from there, then you would need to get a hospital. Hmm? Oh, yes. And then, sorry, you also need to take the NCLEX exam. And then you would need to get a hospital or some type of employer to petition for you. It's not. I don't want to say it's not hard, but I mean, if you start calling around, there is a shortage of nurses, and that's something that USCIS realizes. So it is possible to go ahead and get your green card through that route. So that would be petitioning under EB3, which is a skilled worker. Okay. Question received over text. I've been looking at different options and I believe I qualify for H1B. If I'm able to get a company to sponsor me, can they file it right away? So, no, there are certain times that you can file for H1B. They release the registration period. Typically, they'll say when the dates are towards the beginning of the year. They'll say, okay, this is when you need to register. So the company would first need to register, and then from there, then they again release the dates that you can actually file, and then they would need to get a labor certification as well. So there are certain steps to take, and you can't do it anytime throughout the year. And also, depending on how many petitions there are, there might also not be enough spaces. So it's not even a guarantee. They typically have to do what's called a lottery, where they pick a certain number of people every year. So, no, you cannot do it just anytime, and it's not always a guarantee. But it is a great option, and if there is a company that is willing to petition for you, then definitely go ahead and start researching now and get everything together so that when that time opens, you can go ahead and file. And then we also have a podcast on H1B if you want to go ahead and watch that. Okay. Following up to what you said about coming to the US with a different intention, how can USCIS determine that? Okay, so USCIS has, how do I put this? It's a government agency, just like CBP. So they share their records. They go back and they look at, say, well, you have to provide your I-94 when you are applying for a green card because you have to show legal entry. So they can look at your records with the Customs and Border Protection and see, okay, well, when did this person come in? When did they file for this? So, say you're coming here and you say that you want to go to Disneyland in California, and that's what you're saying you're coming in for. And then within a few days, you instead get married or have an employer petition for you or something. where it's clear that you never even went to Disneyland, you didn't go to California, you instead went to New York. And then all of a sudden, you have somebody that's willing to petition for you and filing that, they're able to see that. So they look at timelines and then they look at the records with the Customs and Border Protection. So things like that are very important to pay attention to when you're coming in, because honestly, and there's even probably some ways that we don't know that they have, because I mean, we don't know everything that USCIS can and can't do. But just know that they are another government agency, and government agencies tend to share information. So if there's any type of red flag from Customs and Border Protection, then USCIS will be able to see that. And then they look at the timeline, see what makes sense, see where you were when. And that's another thing that they can even ask you. So they can send out a request for evidence and say, hey, when you came in, you said that you were going to go to Disneyland in California. Uh, what happened? Send us some pictures from Disneyland. Or where's your ticket? Like, send us your ticket from Disneyland. So we need to see that you were actually there. So if you don't end up providing that evidence and you don't have a good explanation as to why you don't have that evidence, then that's a very, it ups the chance that your petition will be denied. So let's see. Let's go to the next question. Okay. Is it possible to change your mind once you are in the US? Oh, I mean, of course. I mean, once you come into the United States, and like I was saying, say, you come for a graduation and the commencement speaker just really moves you to want to go back to school. Say it's something that, you had kind of given up on, you didn't really know if you wanted to go back to school, and then you hear this speech that talks about opportunities, what have you, and you decide, hey, I think that I really do want to go back to school. I thought about it before, but I decided against it. But you know what? Like, I really, that's something that I need to do. Then, of course, you can change your mind once you're here. It's just what your intention was at the beginning when you came in and when you cross the border. That's what's important. And furthermore, it's not even so much just like what's in your heart, it's what you can prove. It's if you can show that, okay, I I went to this commencement address and the speaker just really inspired me to go back to school. Or, oh, I was, at a, a wedding and my cousin's husband's whoever is an employer, and we got to talking and they really like me, they want to petition for me. I mean, you have to be able to show those things. Intention to illegally stay here or immigrant intent when he came in as a non-immigrant. Okay. Next question. And I was not chosen from the visa lottery like you mentioned. What are my options? What if I'm out of status by then? So, if you are not chosen, oh, um, I pulled the screen down. It's showing on there. Oh, okay. Can they hear me? Oh, I just came up. Okay, okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, because we have to use a phone for this, there are glitches still. We need to get our regular system working again. Okay. So, where was I? Oh, if you're not chosen for the visa lottery, what are your options? Okay. So, I mean, you do still have options, but if you're out of status, then I mean, if you want to go the employment based route, it's really doing it through consular processing. Or, I mean, if you have, say, a fiance, then maybe it's time to get married. I mean, there are options, but it's again knowing what's right for you in your situation. I would need to have a little bit more information, but there are still options for you if it doesn't work out. It's just finding which one is right for you. Okay. Uh, I've heard that USCIS won't be approving any more religious visas for non ministers. Is there an update on this? Okay, that's a very good question because for those of you who don't know, back in, I want to say, was it like April or March? Uh, there was this concern that the non minister religious worker, uh, the program was not going to be signed again. So basically, there's an expiration date on the non minister religious worker program. There's always been an expiration date, and then it typically gets renewed. However, back a few months ago, there was a scare where it had not been renewed. And a lot of people who had already either applied as non ministers or already had their green card applications pending, they were concerned because, I mean, rightfully so, because this is a program that at the time it's been renewed for so many years now, since I think like the 1990s. So it's not something that was really a big concern. So then when it was not renewed, it was a big concern. It's what are we going to do? What's going to happen? We even did an emergency podcast on that because we had so many questions coming in. Now, currently, it has been temporarily renewed, and I believe it's until September. So it's until the end of this fiscal year. We don't know right now if it is going to be renewed again. Something that I will say about it is that if you are currently working, say, on R1 as a religious worker, I think it would be a good idea to become ordained and become a minister. There is still time to go ahead if you have not already submitted your I-360, that you can go ahead and become ordained and then submit your I-360 as a minister just to be on the safe side, because the problem is it's always had some sort of expiration date, but it's always been renewed. But if this is something that's keeping you in the United States, it might be a good idea to have, get ordained just to be on the safe side. Um, Unfortunately, like I said, there is no update at this time other than it's been renewed until September, until the end of the fiscal year. So we will keep everyone updated on that. If we hear anything, we'll go ahead and post about it. But for now, that's that's all that we have. So another important thing to state is that USCIS is accepting expedite requests if you can show that your position is vital to the church and adds to the community as a whole. And if you can show that your position is really furthering the church's message. Yeah, and that there are cultural and social benefits in doing so. Um, whether that's bringing your culture to a certain place that may not have it, whether it's furthering the message through a different point of view, whatever it may be. So that is something that is possible if your visa is current. So that is something that's really important. And now that I start saying this, I realize I haven't really talked about the visa bulletin as of right now. And that's kind of a really important part of employment based green cards. So there's something we talked about it before on this podcast. If you're, a regular uh, listener, watcher, it's the visa bulletin. So that is released every month because every year the United States, they only allow a certain number of visas per category, and then even depending on the country that you're from. So, I mean, this is true for even family based categories as well, but it is very important to employment based petitions. Um, you have to have a visa that's current in order to apply for the adjustment of status. So, what I mean by this is you get a priority date when you file a petition with USCIS. It's typically on your receipt notice at the top, it'll say priority date, and then you're given a date. If you go to the visa bulletin and then you see, uh, they have everything listed, just like I was saying earlier, EBs 1 through 5, and then they even have, certain countries listed for how many are allotted for each category and for those countries as well. And uh, it's really important because, like I said, you cannot apply for adjustment of status if the visa is not either you have to have a priority date that is earlier than the current date that's listed, or it has to show as current. So it's typically a C if it's current. So if you don't have a priority date that's earlier than that date or it's not current, then you can't apply. Why is that important? Because as I mentioned earlier, you have to remain in status. And typically, the immigrant visas, the petitions, they do not give you a status. So when you apply for an I-360 or excuse me, an I-140, those do not grant you a status. That's the visa petition that the green card is based on. So that's not a status in and of itself. The green card is what gives you the status. So if you're not able to apply for adjustment of status and you're about to be out of status, then you need to find another way to keep yourself in status, as I was saying before, at least until visa becomes current and you can apply for adjustment of status. Because I'm it's something that's actually hurting a lot of our clients right now, because for a long time a lot of these categories were showing as current, and then just all of a sudden, I think about March of last year, everything just retrogressed. I mean, really far back for religious workers, for EB2, the National Interest Waiver. I know I've been reading, there's a lot of people right now for the National Interest Waiver for India. I mean, I'd have to check what the actual date was, but I know that it's so far, and there have been people who have been waiting for decades from India to try and come on the national interest waiver. And so it's something that you really need to be cognizant of when you're filing for adjustment of status, especially if it's based on an employment based category or any category, obviously, but just you have to make sure that the visa is current. If not, they will actually send back your adjustment of status application and say visa is not current, and then they will, try and even send it for consular processing. So that's something to really be mindful of. Okay. Question received over text. If I'm on R1 already, can I submit a change of status to a different working visa? Oh, yes. I mean, if you're on R1 already, yes, you can submit a change of status to a different working visa. Question received over text. I've heard you can get a green card without the sponsorship of a company. Is this true? Yes, that is true. It is not easy to obtain. There are a lot of things that go around on the internet about it that are not true. that's what I was just talking about, was the national interest waiver. That's one way of doing it. So there are different ways of doing it through EB1, EB2, and EB5. So for EB1, that's aliens of extraordinary ability. It's a really high bar to meet. We have a podcast on that if you're interested in that. Now, the bar to reach is so high that the visa is current, and it's pretty much always current because it's a very high bar to reach. Um, you have to show that you have done extraordinary things in your field, and that uh, basically you're so extraordinary that the US just should want you to be here, like just lets you come in. Uh, it's a very high bar because it's not even just talking about what you're going to do for the United States, such as EB2, the national interest waiver. It's what you've already done. And again, it's a very long list of things. And people read, the criteria and they think that they can meet it. And we get these questions all the time. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as a lot of people think. It's very high bar to reach. And then again, EB2, the national interest waiver, you don't have to have an employer to sponsor you for that. That's a self petition. It's not as high to reach as EB1, but there are still, it's a long list of criteria that you have to meet. Um, so we also have a couple of podcasts on misconceptions about EB2, just about EB2 in general. It is a very good option. The problem with it being such a good option, though, is that a lot of people are wanting to go for that. So they submit their petition, and then even if it's approved, then the visa is not current. I believe the last time I checked, for just all the other countries other than the ones listed, I think the date was, I think, March of last year, if I'm not mistaken, March 15th, I think. So that's not great. So when you're needing to stay in status and the visa is not current, then that can be troublesome. But it is a great option for a lot of people. And then the other one that you don't need a sponsor for is EB5, which is the employment based category for investors. And we have a podcast on EB5 as well if you're interested in that. So that's when you make an investment to the United States, either through what's called a resource center or a private investment. Um, I forget the exact amounts. I think it's 800,000 or
What?
for investors.
Oh, the investment amount?
Yeah,
It was increased to 800.
I know. 850. Okay, we're checking up on the amount, but I know it's,
For 85.
yeah, for the regional center, and then not the regional center, the private investment. Sorry, like I said, I'm not Dr. Asekun. I don't know it off the top of my head as he does.
Yeah, it's 800,000 if the investment is in a targeted employment area.
Okay,
Or 1,050,000. Or
1,050,000 for a private investment. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, I mean, if you have $1 million to spare and you would like to invest it in the United States, then that is a great option for anyone who's able to do that. And you don't need to have a sponsor for that, but you do need to show that there is a legal source of the funds that you are investing. So, again, you can watch our podcast on that if you're interested in that. Okay. So, for the non minister category, what's going to happen to the people that have their green card applications pending? That's a very good question. So, right now, the answer that we have been given is that they're not going to be denied. They're just going to kind of be there and never be approved, which is kind of terrible. Uh, I would I would think that if they were actually going to end the non-minister category, that they would at least you know allow people who have already done everything the right way to actually obtain their green card. But the answer that we've been told is that it won't be denied, it won't be approved, it'll just kind of be there. At least you can keep renewing your employment authorization, but honestly, it's terrible. If you've done everything the right way and then that's your answer, I would understand why you're frustrated. Okay. Uh, oh, I saw that one of our viewers gave us the amount. Thank you so much. Okay, so how does a working visa lead to a green card? So when you say working visa, if you mean the working visa petition, that's when an employer or through, a self petition, you file the immigrant visa petition. So that's the immigrant visa petition is like the form I-140, the form I-1, no, not I-1, I-140 or I-360. Or I-526 if it's for investors. If it's one of those forms and you get that approved, that's what leads to being able to apply for the green card. So having the visa petition approved is what leads to the actual green card. But the green card itself is what's actually considered like the immigrant visa. So, but the petition is what you need to base the application for green card on. So the petition is what leads to the ability to file for the green card. So I hope that answers the question. Okay. And again, thank you, sir, sir, ma'am. Oh, yes, sir. For the information. Okay, and then the next question. I graduate in May 2024 and apply for EAD on May 13th, 2024. My 90 days window end on 15th of July. USCIS sent me receipt number, but if I'm out of status, if I stay over 60 days. Are you? Yeah, I guess you're still waiting for the EAD to be approved. Like the OPT.
Grace period, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's not very important.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's a little. Okay. Graduate May 2024. I apply for EAD on 13th of May 2024. 15th of July. If they sent you a receipt, but if the OPT is already pending, I'm sorry. I would need more information. I'm a little confused by the question. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Sorry. I applied for OPT, but yet to be approved. Okay, I mean, if you have applied for OPT, but it hasn't been approved yet, how long does it take to get an OPT card usually? Can you check? Okay. So Marissa is checking about how long it typically takes because they have been sending out, I know, the EADs a lot faster than they were before. Um, there was a time, especially during COVID, where it was taking a year and a half to get the EADs, but now we've been getting them a lot faster. But hold on.
I'm assuming it's post completion OPT.
Yeah, because they said that they graduated May 2024. Okay. Uh, bear with us for just a second. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next question. I've heard of people getting approved their working visa in the US, but once they attend their interview at the embassy, they get denied. How is that possible? Okay, so if the visa petition is approved here in the US, and if you're doing consular processing, then yes, you do still have to attend an interview at the embassy or the consular office closest to you. So there are a lot of different reasons for this. Just because you are approved for the visa petition, that does not necessarily mean that your adjustment of status or your green card is going to be.
This is consular.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm. Yeah, uh, but I'm saying in general. Either way, it's not guaranteed whether it's consular processing or adjustment of status. The green card is not guaranteed. As I mean, even if you get the petition approved, that does not mean that you are guaranteed a green card. Now it means that that's a very big hurdle that you have now jumped, but that does not mean that you can get the green card because there are other different things that can make you eligible or ineligible for a green card. 3.5 months. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Going back to the previous question, if your 90-day window had already ended.
Well, no, I mean, he just said
90
right?
days,
So
yeah.
maybe they're about to make a
Yeah,
decision.
so they should be about to make a decision. The current processing time for the post completion EADs, the OPT cards, it says that it's 3.5 months. So they should be about to make a decision on it. Um, so, so hopefully you should be getting a decision soon. I will say that if it goes over the 3.5 months, then you can submit a service request. But if you've already submitted it and if you completed the program in May as well, I mean, you should be able to get the OPT here soon. So that's what's going to keep you in status during this time. And if you want to look for an employer and maybe find somebody that's willing to petition for you, then that's all the better. Now, finishing what I was saying before. So what?
The question he sent another one.
Oh.
Saying that it's he found an employer
Uh-huh.
in the United States. He's abroad. So the petition was approved here, but because it was consular processing.
Oh no, I know they went to
he
the.
went to the interview
Yeah.
and his visa.
Yeah.
Not the green card.
Yeah. No, I know.
His visa.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the visa was approved.
No,
Yeah.
it was denied. So H-1B was approved here.
Oh.
Through consular processing.
Okay.
When he went to the interview, he got denied. He wants to know how is that possible if they already approved him here? Why can't he come with the H-1B?
So.
Because he's not an immigrant.
Yeah. Wait, now I'm confused again. I'm sorry.
Yes. So the petitioner
Uh-huh.
filed a petition here.
Yes.
Then, because he's abroad,
Yeah.
they sent the approval
Uh-huh.
to the embassy.
Yeah.
He attended his interview
Yeah.
at the embassy and
Uh-huh.
he got denied at the
Okay.
embassy. So he wants to know how is that possible? If the petition was approved here,
Yeah.
why not just get like a straight approval over there? It's
Oh.
like maybe they asked him questions.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been some type of red flag that was said during your interview. I mean, something could have changed in between that time frame. There's not really a straight answer. If you can try and do a FOIA to get the records, then that's something that I would suggest to try and see if you can find out exactly what went wrong. Now they won't always give you everything, but it's something that you can try. But unfortunately, when it comes to dealing with uh, consular processing, it's up to their discretion, and basically if you look at them wrong, they can deny you. I mean, there's not really much that you can do other than, try and find a different category or, reapply or whatever it may be, depending on the reason that you were denied. Now, I will say thank you, everybody, for joining in today. It is after 1. I again apologize that I am not Dr. Asekun. He will be back next week. And then be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, whatever social media platform that you use. And be sure to tune in every week. We do this every week, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you so much.